We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, June 17th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin and you're watching News Generation. Today we're joined by Cheska Dainhong.
Happy Monday, everyone!
Happy Monday! And we actually have a new special panelist joining us in the studio. He's Dong-hyuk David Shin. Dong-hyuk, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
And please introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Dong-hyuk. I'm a senior program manager at UniKorea Foundation, and I serve on the Ministry of Unification's advisory board as in the Unification Future Planning Committee and Policy Advisory Committee.
Great. Right. Now, today, Cheska and Dong-hyuk, David are here to speak on, as usual, behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Now, as usual, we're going to start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending online over the past 24 hours. We begin this week in Korea, where discussions are underway to set the minimum wage for next year. According to a survey by Workplace Kapjil 119, a civic organization that supports victims of office abuse, 1 in 7 office workers in the country believe that 11,000 Korean won, which is around $8, is the appropriate minimum wage for next year. This is an 11.6% increase from this year's amount of 9,860 won, or $7.10. The survey polled 8,000 office workers in Korea, 19 or older, from May 31st to June 10th. And the legal deadline to determine next year's minimum wage is June 27th. Now, moving on in Japan, data shows that 80% of upcoming college graduates have already found a job before graduating. A survey conducted early this month by a Japanese job search platform on 811 college seniors set to graduate next year revealed that 82.4% have already secured jobs. Now, this is up 9.3 percentage points from the previous year and is the highest figure recorded since 2016. While these students say they're relieved to have landed jobs before graduating, experts say this highlights Japan's workforce shortage due to its shrinking and aging population. Ending up with North Korea-related news, according to Beyond Parallel, a website under the Center for Strategic and International Studies think tank providing data and analysis related to North Korea, there has been an exceptional surge of activity at the regime's Sinpo South shipyard and its graving dock over the past 5 weeks. The regime's hero Kim Gun-ok ballistic missile submarine, the A-24 Yeongung experimental ballistic missile submarine, and the submersible missile test stand barge were all moved from their original positions during this period. Now, these 3 vessels are considered core elements of the North submarine missile programs. The website suggested these activities may hint at the regime conducting sea trials of the hero Kim Gun-ok ballistic missile submarine and resuming flight tests of its submarine-launched ballistic or cruise missiles. Now, tensions have been simmering over the Korean peninsula throughout the past few weeks, with the North and South engaging in tit-for-tat propaganda campaigns. And now we're being warned of a possible submarine missile test. So here in the studio, starting off with you, Dong-hyuk, do you think that this indicates a fresh round of provocations from North Korea, and what are your thoughts on these findings in general?
The fundamental context is North Korea's shift in its inter-Korean policies to two adversarial states. December last year, Kim Jong-un said inter-Korea relations are no longer of one kinship or homogeneity, but of two hostile nations, two belligerents at war. In January this year, North Korea called for codification of the new inter-Korean relations, trying to erase South Korean influence and trying to make South Korea a bigger enemy, so the North Korean public wouldn't consider South Korea as an alternative.
Right, so this could be seen as a movement of the regime trying to really define and show that South Korea, it's defining South Korea as an adversarial state. Now, what are your thoughts on this development, Cheska?
You know, I really agree with David on the comment that North Korea is actively trying to make South Korea a sort of an adversarial, and in terms of that, South Korea is no longer an alternative to a lot of the North Korean people who want to either defect or leave North Korea. I mean, one of the things that we have seen is also the trash balloon that has been flying over the border and has been causing problems. Now, these military tensions are only worsening the relationship between the two Koreas. And at the moment, because of the lack of communication between the two lines, as a citizen, it is obviously very fearful.
Right.
And I do hope that the communication line opens or somehow there are some resolutions to this because there's no end to this, quote unquote, zero-sum game.
Right. So the inter-Korean tensions are currently hitting its peak at the moment. So we'll have to see how these tensions and clashes unfold. And that was our news feed for this Monday. And moving on to our main discussion of the day, it's been quite a while since we last talked about North Korea here on NewsGen. We just talked about it in our previous news feed. So for today, take a look at the screen to find out more about what we're going to discuss. For those in South Korea, North Korea is just across the inter-Korean border, yet it remains shrouded in mystery for many of us. While we often hear about its powerful leader, the regime, and its military provocations, but there's so much more happening within the North. Today, we're going to explore what's trending among North Korea's younger generation and how they differ from previous generations. Right, to help us explore this topic regarding millennials and Gen Z in North Korea, we've invited Dong-hyuk to the studio, or otherly known as David. So David, could you please introduce yourself a bit more and kind of tell us what sparked your interest to work in this field?
Sure. I'm with the Uni Korea Foundation. We are a civilian organization established with from the fundraising campaign from the civilians with the hope for the unified Korean peninsula. We work with South Korean young adults, North Korean defectors, and international community to create awareness and build consensus on the unification. My grandfather's hometown is in North Korea, and he was separated from his family during the Korean War. And I grew up listening to his hopes for unification and with many trips to inter-Korean borders.
It's really amazing that David started his career after listening to stories of his grandfather.
That's a very touching testimonial.
Right.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, definitely. And Dong, I want to ask you now, back to our discussion. One of the reasons why we chose to discuss North Korea this week is due to the rising inter-Korean tensions, especially in the past few weeks over the Korean Peninsula. So could you please walk us through the recent developments?
Sure. The rising tensions in the Korean Peninsula are multifaceted. Between May 28th and June 9th, North Korea launched 1,600 balloons filled with trash and propaganda in 4 different rounds.
Right.
Also, North Korean military is erecting walls and digging grounds inside of DMZ, and possible Putin's visit to Pyongyang early this week. These are the signs of Kim regime's attempt to counteract its negative effect of the nuclear development on regime maintenance, which has been more difficult recently.
Right.
North Koreans are discontent. So North Korea tries to reject South Korean influence and eliminate South Korean culture. So the North Koreans wouldn't consider South Korea as a future alternative.
Right.
And will North Korea continue to send these balloons and try to make other provocations? I assess that it will remain, but not long term, because it is transactional and it is too costly to continue.
Right, definitely. So we'll have to see how further developments play out. Now, besides the trash Korean balloons that you mentioned and also Putin's potential visit to North Korea this week, another issue that has caught our attention, especially among millennials and Gen Z recently, is the increasing number of millennials and Gen Zs, or the younger generation, defecting from North Korea. So Jessica, please tell us more about this too.
Yeah, absolutely. David kind of gave me an opening, but I think a lot of the MZers of North Korean are actually considering South Korea as a new alternative.
Right.
Which sort of led to this increase in North Korean defectors. Now, the Korea Research and Development Institute recently published a special column in the North Korean Economic Review, which was titled, "More than half of the North Korean defectors who entered the South last year were from the MZ generation."
Wow.
And the number of elite groups, such as the diplomats and the international students, was actually the highest since 2017. And this is really important. The reason for the defection in the previous was because of the shortage of food, or really, the lack of livelihood, like David's grandfather, who had to literally fight for their lives. But now, they defect because they either hate or
Right.
can't stand the regime anymore. So there's a change in the reason that people are defecting, which I think is really, really important.
Right, this is definitely a big difference that we're seeing among the younger generation in North Korea who chose to defect when compared to their parents' generation.
Right.
Now, back to you, Dong-hyuk, is this something that you've also noticed while working in this field?
Sure, that is true. In the same article, Dr. Cho writes that when North Koreans see the development of South Korea and South Korean culture, they consider South Korea as the future alternative. And so North Korea recently created laws preventing North Korean youth
Right.
assimilating South Koreans, but no internal propaganda is enough to contain. Yeah.
I see. Right, so we're talking about the younger generation in North Korea and how they're different from their parents or grandparents' generation. Now, we also asked our viewers what they wanted to know about millennials and Gen Z in North Korea, and here's what 3 of them had to say. So if we look at the comments, Sean Mendes, quite a name, says, what aspects of daily life in North Korea do you think are most misunderstood by people outside it? Leon says, what are some popular hobbies or activities enjoyed by young people in North Korea? How much access do young people have to music and entertainment like movies and TV shows? What is the education system like for MZers in North Korea? Taras Bell asks, what aspects about North Korea made you want to leave, and did any outside information influence your decision even more? Right, so these are some of the questions that our viewers want to ask towards the younger generation of the regime. So now, to help us answer these questions, we're going to invite an expert to join our discussion right after the break. We're back, and today we're joined by Cho Kyung-il, an author and the leader of Peace Agora, an organization dedicated to providing a platform to discuss Korean unification-related issues. Welcome, Kyung-il, to the show, and good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Great, it's lovely to have you. So our first question for you, Kyung-il, is, as mentioned earlier in our discussion, one of the biggest reasons why young North Koreans are choosing to defect is actually their growing dissatisfaction with the regime. So what do you think is behind this discontent?
You're right. In the past, North Korean young people were dissatisfied with the regime due to economic difficulties such as hunger and starvation, so they chose to defect. However, it can be said that economic conditions have recently become better than in the past, but young people chose to defect from North Korea. Of course, it is due to dissatisfaction with the government, but there is something different from the past behind it all. Young people now are the so-called market generation. I was also a first market generation. I was like a Jangmadang person. What this means is that they know how to live on their own if they are given choices and a certain amount of freedom. These days, North Korean young generation's blind loyalty to the regime has become less intense than in the past. And the current generation of young people in North Korea is the generation after the collapse of the distribution system. So they are the generation that is building their own economic life without direct help from the state. Therefore, young people are dissatisfied because the government is restricting their private economic activities and even their cultural life choices. That's why they defect.
You know, we actually received a question from one of our viewers, and switching the gear a little bit, they're also curious about the popular hobbies and activities young people enjoy in North Korea, the MZers, and actually the level of access these young individuals have to music, entertainment, movies, and TV shows. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, currently there are only 4 TV channels in North Korea. Even for this, an individual must purchase a separate frequency transceiver to be able to watch all 4 channels. This means that people who do not have the financial conditions only watch 1 channel. That's just a propaganda channel, right? And the contents transmitted from the central broadcasting station is only propaganda. So it's not fun. Officially, contents from other countries cannot be enjoyed because North Korean authorities block and ban outside information. But there is always a way, you know. Right.
Right.
Okay, Kyungin, my question is, what are some of the biggest struggles and challenges faced by millennials and Gen Z in North Korea?
Well, these days, young people in North Korea are a generation that has they learned how to live without help from the government. This is because they belong to the market system. For young people, economic activities in the market are very important. For them, it's really important. However, recently the North Korean government have been controlling the market, and cultural activities are also being cracked down on more strongly. Since North Korean young people have been exposed to South Korean movies and dramas and even musics, they have a lot of information about the South Korea. They even imitate Korean culture and speech, how to speak like Korean style, you know, like Korean style and fashion style, and then even the accent, you know. So they find a hope from the K drama, K movie, you know. But North Korea is a society where hope disappears as young people grow up. So they cannot find the hope or dreams in their own country. So these are the difficulties and challenges faced by young North Korean generation they faced. So they should have a minimum of freedom at least. Yeah.
Great. Well, hope we can see things getting better. That's all the questions we have for you, Kyung-il. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right, so no longer having this blind loyalty towards the regime and also being more exposed to South Korean culture and having this more capitalistic mindset as being part of the Jangmadang generation is one of some of the traits that were mentioned by our interviewee. And what also caught our attention regarding the younger generation in North Korea is that we're more seeing the rise in cohabiting unwed couples, right, Cheska?
Which was very interesting because, I mean, we have definitely noticed it. Cohabitation increasing here in South Korea.
Right.
So I was actually quite almost surprised.
Me too.
To see this article, which we will see, and then realize that there is a similar phenomenon that is happening in North Korea at the moment. So if we take a look at the screen, here's an article from a foreign media, Daily NK, and the title of it goes, "More young North Koreans are living together before marriage," and the subtext was North Koreans are choosing cohabitation because of the gradual liberalization of sexual culture in the country. But personally, after having read the article, I think the major focus is more on the socio-economic aspect that is gradually changing. So let me explain. I think one, the financial burden on people getting married, especially on women, can be huge because once they get married, especially since COVID, the economy has tanked. And as we discussed in the Jangmadang generation, the food shortage is becoming a serious problem. So for mid-lower level tier people, getting married in such an economic climate is almost doubling their risk. And two, as we may already guess, divorce in North Korea is extremely difficult.
Right.
So imagine a married woman having to also work and raise children without any guarantee of divorce, or if the marriage goes bad, can seem very burdensome. So I think they feel very trapped. And also culturally, MZers known as Jangmadang, I think have proven to be more socially conscious and proactive in terms of creating their own livelihood. So knowing that the North Korean government isn't going to support them anymore, I think they're choosing cohabitation as an option to actually continue their livelihood. Yeah.
Right, so increased financial burden and also the stress or the burden of juggling life at home and also work. I think these are one of the main reasons why the younger generation here in South Korea are kind of dreading or deciding whether to have kids or not. So, which is one of the reasons why our country is concerned about the plummeting birth rate. So I want to ask you, Dong-hyuk, has this new trend among millennials and Gen Z in North Korea actually led to a lower birth rate in the regime?
The UN Population Fund estimated that North Korea's birth rate has decreased to 1.8, which is really low, especially for a developing country.
Right.
Kim Jong-un even shed a tear when he was discussing about the low birth rate in North Korea late last year. And Cheska's right. In North Korea, too, marriage and childbirth are no longer obvious and natural choice at the right age, but rather a deliberate biographical plan of an individual for economic reasons.
Right.
Nevertheless, in North Korea, young couples, they usually get permission from their parents
I heard.
to live together. So I think for North Korean houses, low birth rate and cohabitations have a similar reason for economic reasons, but I don't think cohabitation is the reason for low birth rate in North Korea.
Right, definitely. And when talking about this cohabitation among unwed younger couples in North Korea, Cheska, how could this be translated or seen in any more broader social perspective?
Yeah, it's very interesting because for one, the North Korean government reportedly monitors and punishes, David, am I correct? It is actually illegal to cohabit prior to marriage. So when they do this, it is actually regarded as a non-socialist phenomenon and almost a rebellion to the North Korean regime. But the fact that the number of young cohabitants increasing could actually mean, and from our previous episode on North Korean MZers, this is really significant because now the MZers aren't tolerating the North Korean regime or policy, and this is almost an act of defiance, knowing that they're going against the North Korean regime and the law. So in my very personal perspective, I actually think this could be a very positive outlook.
Can I ask you why?
Absolutely. For one, it actually sheds light on the fact that there might be a change in the regime from the bottom up. So now because MZs, as we have discussed here, are actually taking a more active and meaningful decisions on how to create their own livelihood outside of the regime, hopefully this could lead in a direction that we are all hoping for, is my personal opinion. Yeah.
Right, definitely. And last but not least, before we wrap up our episode today, Dong-hyuk, this was your first time on Yusin as a panelist, so any last remarks that you'd like to say?
Thanks for having me. I was really nervous.
You did well.
Thank you. I like to stress that North Korea's changed policy changed policy towards South and unification is likely change on opportunistic and transactional judgments. So South Korea must remain consistent in its policy for a free and unified Korean peninsula where all citizens can have ownership and enjoy freedom, human rights, security, and prosperity.
Right, hoping for better lives among people in both Koreas. And until then, Yuzjin is here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks today to Cheska Dainha.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you.
And also David Dong-hyuk.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.